Hi, my name's Tracy. I'm a chef here at Hy-Vee Waterfront. Been cooking for over 30 to 35 years. Previously, before Iowa City, I was in New Orleans, Kansas City, as well as Atlanta. There's so many delicious foods out there and so many ways to make them Larapin. Larapin is a Southern expression used to describe excellent food. And in this series, I will share my knowledge and some great recipes that will not only improve your skills in the kitchen, but also expand your knowledge of the foods you eat. Welcome to Larapin Cooking with Chef Tracy. Today's Larapin recipes are going to be salmon and squash roulade, crawfish and pepper jack cheese stuffed bread, as well as sirloin stuffed with king crab and asparagus. Let's get started. The very first thing is a basic butter sauce, or a beurre blanc as it's called. Beurre blanc works well for any type of fish. You could use it with meat. So I'm going to get started. It's very, very simple. You have 4 different ingredients. Start off with white wine. I use a Chardonnay. The reason I want to get this started ahead, it takes a little while to reduce down. So I'm going to go ahead and put this whole little split of Chardonnay in. And then shallots, about 2 tablespoons of shallots, minced fine. And 1 tablespoon of garlic, once again minced. And you're going to take this and put it on the fire, on medium-high heat, and just let that start to reduce down. You need to keep an eye on it, of course, so it's not going to dry up on you, but you want it somewhat dry. So one of the better dishes I remember in New Orleans when I was there at Jazz Fest was crawfish bread. What we're going to do is a takeoff on crawfish bread. We'll get started on that. What I have here are some basic ingredients. I have some frozen, these are frozen dough balls or dinner roll balls that we have in our frozen section. You just let them thaw out. We're going to flatten them out pretty good. Lay them down on your cutting board. You want to get all the bubbles out so you don't have any issues with that proofing up on you. And for some reason, this is one dish in New Orleans you only get during Jazz Fest time. Number one, because crawfish is in season at that point, and it's really just an easy dish you could pick up and walk through the fairgrounds listening to some good jazz. So like I said, I'm just going to flatten these out. We're just going to make 2 of them. So you'll need for 2, 4 rolls. And what I have here is it's a mixture of Louisiana crawfish tails, pepper jack cheese, Creole seasoning, and green onions. So we're going to go ahead. Dennis is going to talk a little bit on each fish as we're using it and the difference between, let's say, Louisiana crawfish and getting imported crawfish such as from China or Vietnam or whatever it may be.
The crawfish that we use at the store here that we carry is Louisiana crawfish. It's important because, one, it's a local item, considered local to the United States. A lot of the crawfish that you get comes from China. It's farm raised in China. One of the important facts is that the local crawfish is what we consider a responsible choice, a sustainable choice. To get into the responsible choice, what that means is it's our sustainability initiative. It's basically based on working with a company called Fishwise, Monterey Bay Aquarium. What we're looking for is fish that are sustainable, which means the stocks can be preserved in the future so future generations can enjoy the fish, and also that the fish is caught or raised in a way that doesn't harm the environment. A lot of things can be affected with that. The wild fish, well, when they're fishing it, important things like bycatch. different ways that they catch fish can harm other fish. Turtles, dolphins, unintended catch. They can catch other fish that they can't actually keep and have to throw away. That's a net loss for the oceans, and what we're looking for is fish that don't have the high bycatch. Everything that we carry is either a responsible choice or what they call an fisheries improvement project. They're working on it. The companies that we work with, they're working on changing the way they do things so that the environment isn't harmed and that fish is going to be there in the future. Other things are farming. When you get into the crawfish, the way they farm it, a lot of issues exist when you farm fish, farm crawfish. You have runoff, escapability, disease can happen, and what we do with the responsible choices, we're sourcing product that they're responsible in how they raise it. Are they using clean water, closed systems? Are they doing the right thing, basically? And that's very important when it comes to farm seafood, because farm seafood is the future. There's just not enough fish in the sea to provide for everybody. So what we look for in these companies is to improve how they grow these animals, how they take care of them, and how they take care of the environment around them. So the Louisiana crawfish is a responsible choice here at the store, and the way they do it is the right way. I've been down there to the crawfish farms. I'm sure you probably have been down there. They do a very good job. They don't pack it so full that there's a lot of disease, and there are short seasons, and there is a limited amount. With responsibility comes measuring how much you take, and that's a big part of the program, that if you don't take too much and you leave some, and that's one of the great things about Louisiana product, and it's better. It just tastes better. Don't you agree?
That's the one thing I was going to say, is it does taste a lot better than the Chinese crawfish. For some reason, I think it's all the good stuff we send down the Mississippi River that ends up in the New Orleans and Louisiana area. It makes the crawfish taste a little bit better. And the Chinese crawfish, I'm not going to knock any companies, but it doesn't have half the flavor as what you'd find in Louisiana crawfish. So what I'm going to do, I have an egg wash here, just straight eggs that has been scrambled. Just a small amount of egg wash. I'm only going to put it on 2 of them. And then now I have a full 1 pound of crawfish here and 6 ounces of cheese. So almost 1 pound of 2-to-1 ratio is what you want to have. And then green onions, I would say about a quarter bunch is what I have in there. And then seasoning, you just want to season it to your flavor. If you don't want something real spicy, leave a little bit Creole seasoning, leave a little bit less, or put a little bit more if you want it a little bit spicier. The thing that you'll find about taste, it's very judgmental. You have to. I try to stay in the middle of the road, just so people don't say, "Oh, that's too spicy for me. I don't like it." All right, so put the dollop right in the center, and then I'm just going to take the other roll and put it right on the top. Now the key part to this is sealing it properly. The egg wash will help seal it, and you almost have to pinch it as well, so you don't have the cheese or the crawfish leaking out. A little bit. Ted. Then I'm going to take the fork just like you would with a roll, crescent roll or apple pie, however you want to say it. And I'm just going to crimp it down a little bit, and it looks a little bit better than just a turtle shell. You don't want to forget, though, that we still have this here. You can see it's reduced down by about a half, but it's still not quite ready. I want to let it go just a little bit more. What we're looking for is, as you know, in a white wine, sec to be dry. You want it all demi-sec. You don't want it completely dry. So now what you'll do, you just want to check and make sure that all the seals, that it's all sealed properly. If you see that you have a little crimp in there, just go ahead and hit it a touch more. And then before you bake it, this will add a nice little glaze. You're going to take your egg wash and just wash it on the top. And here you have your crawfish pies. I'll have some cooked here in a little bit. You're going to put these in the oven, 350 degrees for about 20 to 25 minutes until they get a nice golden brown. Our next dish is going to be a stuffed sirloin. Here we have top sirloin. Basically, the entire round is cut into a steak. By them here, it's about a 10 to 12 ounce steak. I'm going to take this and just with a meat hammer, we're not going to get it completely flat. I'm just going to tenderize it a little bit more and make it a little bit more even all the way around. So I say when it's about a ½ inch, a little bit more than a ½ inch, you're ready to go. That's all you need to do to it. The two items that we're going to be putting in, two of my favorite items, king crab and asparagus. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to season just salt and black pepper the sirloin. And then on your asparagus, you can see if you've ever cooked the whole asparagus, it's a little bit tough on the ends. So I'm going to take 5, 6 pieces here. I'm just going to trim about 2 inches off. And then lay this down right on top of your sirloin. King crab lobster's my favorite. This will be my second favorite. You really can't go wrong with a king crab. I'm going to go ahead and cut one open and kind of explain what I'm doing here. And while I'm tying, Dennis is going to go a little bit more in depth about king crab and the type of king crab that's available in the market in the United States and really what's good and what's bad for the environment. So what you want to do, you'll just take the whole leg, and I call it the yellow part here. And I have you can use a pair of kitchen shears. These are made specifically for cutting open crab legs. And then I'm going to turn it over right where kind of where the hinge, I guess you call it. And I'm just opening it up, so I'm not going to really break the crab leg up too much. You get into the joint, it's a little bit tougher. You can see that's going to come right off, so you just pull the top off. And then you want to get a hold of the entire leg. And that's basically a really good dinner right there, just that alone. You really can't go wrong with just that. Dennis and I have been lucky enough to go ahead and we do a marketing campaign and on king crab with Trident, in partnership with Trident. We've been lucky enough to win the past few years to go ahead and see and learn a lot more about how the crab is processed and how basically Trident Seafood works. And all I'm going to do with this now, I'm going to shut up in a second, Dennis. You'll get to talk. I didn't talk too much. I'm going to roll it up so you can't see. Basically, the two ends of the sirloin are going to meet. Then I'm going to take some butcher twine. If you don't have any of this at your house, Clint, our meat manager, would be more than happy to help you out. It's kind of an old school butcher's knot that I'm going to do here. But you want to get started right on the end. Just want to go underneath. And you're going to go one time. Yeah, that was easy. One time, and then another, so it doesn't slip. You don't want it real tight. You just don't want it to slip on you. Then you go ahead and make a knot out of it. So the next thing we're going to do, you take a hold of the twine like this, make a loop going this way, slide it underneath. I'm going to do this about 6 times. I'll try to slow down a little bit. Once again, just twist it around. And you just want to tighten it back on itself. You want to have a straight line going all the way down. So you're pulling up this way, and then you're just tightening it, going straight like that. Go ahead, Dennis. I'll let you talk all about crab now.
It's just amazingly simple. That's the main thing that's really cool about that. I just want to talk a little bit about king crab, kind of king crab 101. The crab that we're using right now is a golden king crab. There's different types of king crab. There's blue crab, golden, red, brown, are the commercial varieties. Coming out of Alaska. We use all Alaskan crab, and I'll get to why in a minute, but these guys here, crab are...
Here.
What's that?
Let me just finish this up. What you want to do is go around, catch the sirloin on that side, and then you're just going to tie it onto the piece here that you had before. I'm going to season the whole thing, then I'm going to sear it. He can keep on talking, and I'll show you how to sear this here.
Well, king crab is, they discern it by size, and they do it by count. Much like shrimp is, you'll find a 51 to 60 count is the size of shrimp. King crab, you can't really do it by the pound, so they do it by a 10-pound box. So this size here is what we call a 12 to 14 size, which is a rather large size crab leg. Most of the time you'll see what's called a 20 up or 20-24. About half this size is the size that you'll see most of the time advertised and sold in bulk. We'll carry multiple sizes, especially come Christmas time. People like to have the larger crab. You saw the big piece of meat I got out of there to do stuff like this with. The bigger the crab leg, the more meat you're going to get and less shell. So you're actually, even though it's more expensive, you're getting more crab for your money. You're getting a lot less waste. So it really is good to get a bigger crab leg if you can, especially if you want to do something like this. As Tracy mentioned, we were lucky to go to be able to go to Seattle for the last couple of years and visit the Trident plant where we buy our crab from. And they are probably, you've probably seen some Trident boats on Deadliest Catch. They do have captains that have had boats on there. I believe the first year they had a captain on there. But they're one of the bigger companies in Alaska, maybe the biggest for crab. And what they do is Alaskan crab is very sustainable. It's probably the model for the world is sustainability. Everybody follows what Alaska is doing. It's built into their state law, constitution, to have sustainable resources. So they have to follow. It's the law for them. And they do a great job. So what they do is they monitor the populations, the viability of the species. And if there's not enough crab there to be sustainable, they'll shut it down. A couple years ago, we had blue crab, which is probably one of my favorite crabs to have. Then this last year, they didn't have enough, so they shut it down. They just didn't have any. So prices will kind of vary because of that. What you'll have is sometimes you'll get spikes, and if there's a lot of crab, then it'll come down a little bit. The main competitor for Alaskan king crab is Russian crab. Russia is kind of, as they described it, the Wild West. It's a free-for-all, every man for himself. There's no regulation. They don't put any limits on the catches. A lot of pirating going on. And basically, they catch all they can and all they can sell. So you'll find that Russian crab is a lot cheaper. So when you go to bigger club stores and whatnot, and you're buying crab, look at the label. A lot of times, I'm pretty sure it'll be Russian crab. And the problem with that is that it's not sustainable, and at some point that will crash. And Alaska is doing it the right way, and that's why we fully support Alaskan crab. We moved over to Alaskan crab probably about 3 years ago. We switched over completely because they're doing it the right way. That's the biggest issue with crab, is that to make it a renewable resource. Alaska.
I'm going to interrupt you.
Yeah, go ahead, bud.
You can see the little bit of haze that forms above your saute pan here. That's when you want to go ahead and put your stuffed sirloin in. And I'm going to sear this on all sides, and then I'm going to finish it off in the oven.
One of the things a lot of people ask me is how do we know we're getting the right stuff? How do we know that we're getting the best quality stuff? Our company has a USDC lot inspector in our warehouse, And what that means is it's a government inspector that we pay for, and we're one of only 2 companies in the country that do this. The inspector inspects every shipment that comes in, so he'll inspect it for quality, temperature, see if it ever got warm along the way. Anytime something gets warm, it loses quality and it can go bad. They'll check it to make sure it's the right species. So a lot of times you hear in the news somebody selling a different kind of snapper for a red snapper, and it's not the right thing. He'll catch that, he'll test it. What happens with that is that companies realize that you have an inspector and you get the best fish all the time, because they're not going to take the chance of sending a truckload in and having you reject it and send it back. The temperature monitoring has been a huge thing, so that we know from when it was caught all the way to us, it's been temperature in the right temperature zone. So we know we get the best quality stuff. That's just to ensure that everything's going the right way. Everything's on the up and up. And this, you hear a lot of stuff in the news. You'll get TV shows love to talk about seafood and all these different things going on, all these irregularities or people doing the wrong thing. And that's one way that we make sure that we're getting the right thing. So and with Alaskan crab, with Trident, we have the same kind of safeguards to make sure that we are getting Alaskan crab and not the wrong stuff.
So I have one side seared on the sirloin. You see you get a light brown underneath. And what I'm going to do is just make sure all sides are seared so you don't have any of the raw meat there. And I'm going to go ahead and put it in the oven, let it finish cooking. I'm going to bring it up to about medium rare to medium, so it's hot all the way through. Your asparagus will be cooked, your crab will be cooked all the way through. 350 degrees, 10 to 15 minutes. Next dish we're going to be doing is it's a poached salmon, and it's going to be stuffed with fresh tarragon, zucchini, and yellow squash. This is a dish that I served in a couple different restaurants here in town. It's kind of a fun dish. I like roulades. You'll see, I guess that's my number 2 thing that I have so far is a roulade of sirloin, and now I have a roulade of salmon. So you'll take a salmon fillet, 5 to 6 ounce piece. You're going to lay it skin side up. And I'll explain the skin side up here in a minute. Skin side up, all your salmon, if the skin is off, you're going to see the fat right here. Some people don't prefer to have the fat. I personally like it. It adds a little bit more flavor to it. But there's always 2 sides to the salmon, the skin side and then the flesh side. You want the skin side down because the way we're going to roll this salmon, you don't want to have that on the outside. It's not as pleasant to look at as the flesh side is. So you'll take plastic wrap, don't cover it all the way, leave yourself a little bit of room, and same thing on the other side with the plastic. You can take trusty hammer again. You don't want to use the tenderizer side, you want to use the flat side. You're going to start in the middle, and you just want to work around with it. You don't want to start on the side and make it all flat. You want this to be, I'd say, about a ½ inch to an inch thick all the way around. And just do it nice and soft to start. And just keep spreading it out as you go. So now you have your salmon fillet that used to be this thick. It's now, as I said before, about 1.5 inches or a ½ inch to an inch, a little bit less thick. Open up your plastic. We're going to season it, some salt and black pepper on the inside. And I have some fresh tarragon leaves here. I'm just going to kind of randomly place the tarragon on there. If you really don't like tarragon, dill works fine. If you don't like dill and tarragon, basil, a nice fresh herb to go ahead and get the effervescent out of the herb itself. Here I have julienne zucchini and yellow squash. Nobody has any of this time of year, so I just figured it'd be appropriate because everybody has too much zucchini and too much yellow squash this time of year. And we're going to take that, pull your salmon down very tightly onto it, onto the other side, just so you can't see the zucchini and yellow squash anymore. And then you're going to turn it around, once again keeping it tight, and roll it over so you have, all you see is the salmon. And the zucchini and yellow squash and tarragon or fresh herbs, whichever one you use, are on the inside. Now you want to get this very tight. So you're going to hold it, spread it out, and just keep going like this. And the plastic's going to go ahead and mold it for you so you have a perfect little tube. This won't unwind. I'm going to take this from this point and I'm going to go ahead and put it in about 1.5 inches of water with a lid on the top. I'm going to poach it for 15 to 20 minutes until it's firm all the way through, okay? I'm going to let Dennis talk about the different types of salmon that are available year-round, the ones that we probably think are the best cuts of fish that we've ever had. I know we agree on that as king salmon, fresh king salmon, there's nothing better. But I'm going to let him talk a little bit more about salmon while I go ahead and get our next dish ready.
So salmon, you have wild salmon and then you have farm-raised salmon. The wild salmon, as we agree, is probably the best salmon to have. The unfortunate thing about wild salmon is it has a short season. We get into salmon late April and then we're done in September, so we're coming to a close here on the wild salmon. Wild salmon is Alaskan, and there again, we get back to the sustainability. It's very well managed, very well regulated, so the amount of salmon we get from year to year varies. This year was a great year for sockeye. We had a lot of sockeye salmon, and it was a pretty good year for coho. Not such a good year for king. I think we had king maybe twice this year. But it just depends, and that's the great thing is it'll regulate and it'll work itself out, and later years we'll have some king, and that's the great thing about sustainability. As far as wild salmon goes, king is the best, sockeye is the next step, and then you get coho, and then you get into pinks and chums. The thing that makes king the best is probably its high fat oil content, and they're bigger fish. Usually you get some fillets you can get about 1.5 inches, 2 inches thick. Sockeyes are very good. They have a high oil content too, but they're small, a little thinner. Cohos are bigger than sockeyes, but don't have near as much fat in them. And chums are very lean and very plentiful, and that's what you'll see called pink salmon, chum salmon, keta. They're the ones that you'll see a lot of times packaged up, frozen into portions and whatnot. But wild salmon is always the best for you because it's going to have all the natural omega-3s in it. Being the season's short and there's not a lot of fish, you have to fill in the blanks with farm-raised salmon. And farm-raised salmon has had a bad rap over the years because of a lot of things. Diseases run rampant through farms everywhere from South America to Europe, United States. And what happens is that they pack so many fish into a pen in the open ocean, and all those fish together, just like humans. You get a lot of humans on an airplane, somebody coughs, everybody gets it. And so what they've had to do is alter how they do things. And the best farms have reduced the populations of salmon in pens. Actually, the best systems have more what's called a closed system. What happens when they put the fish in the ocean, they have big nets, and they pile them in there, and they put them in bays where the water doesn't move as much. And so what happens is when they feed them, then there's excrement, and it all comes to the bottom, and it destroys the bottom of the ocean. And so nothing else can ever grow there. And then you have problems with escape. If a fish gets out, he's a farm-raised, genetically modified fish. If he gets into the wild populations, they can be cross mixes, and it can cause problems with the wild fish. So they got to be very careful about that. And then, so the other thing is with wild fish is they eat more. It takes 3 pounds of fish to create 1 pound of salmon. So that's not a very environmentally sound way to go about it. You're taking more out of the environment and not getting much out. So what they're working on is feed and fish that take less feed to create the same amount of fish. There's one company that we've worked with, it's called Verlasso Salmon. It is a responsible choice salmon. It's the only one I know of. It's been hailed by Monterey Bay Aquarium as the only, if you're not familiar with Monterey Bay Aquarium, they assess stocks and they give them a green, a yellow, and a red rating. Green being the best, yellow being okay, but they're working on it, and red being avoid. It's the only one that I know of that's gotten a yellow or green. It's gotten a green rating because of the fact of the feed and how they raise them in a cleaner environment. That problem with that is that we don't get it very often. There's not a lot of it. The next best one we get is the Scottish salmon, and our customers tell us that it's the best tasting farm-raised salmon they've had. They are in a fisheries improvement project, so we do carry. That's why we're allowed to carry it. They're working towards the goal of getting green lighted. Hopefully down in the future we do see that, because it actually is the best tasting salmon that we've had. I like it better than the Veloso, but the Veloso is more environmentally sound. So that's what happens with salmon. You get farm-raised salmon from places down south, when I say like South America, whatnot. They don't have the best practices. They don't do the best things. So a lot of times it's cheaper. Our salmon costs a little more than most people's salmon because we do make those choices. But we feel that it's better to have the best and pay a little more than to have the cheaper price and have the issues that come along with.
I'm going to interrupt you here, just so you can see. Yeah, I'm going to interrupt you.
Okay.
You can see where we're at with the roulade. You could, on the salmon itself, you can see it's still raw on these ends here. Just take it one time, flip it over, and then put it back on the stove and cover it up with plastic and let it cook a little bit more. But we're looking for the tightness on there, so that's all I wanted to say about that. The next dish that I'm going to be making is scallops lyonnaise, as in the style of Lyon, France, which two of the main garnishes that you would see in lyonnaise food or lyonnaise food is potatoes and onions. We're going to start with the potatoes. What I have is just a baked potato here, or a baker potato, russet, that I took, peeled, and shredded. The key part to these potatoes, excuse me, after you shred them, you have to constantly wash them until there's no starch. The water has to be clear. If your water's not clear, your potatoes, they're going to burn when you go ahead and put them into the pan. You're getting all the starches and the sugars out, so all you have is just the straight potato. So you're just going to take a small amount, lay it onto a sheet. We're going to do 6 of these scallops today. And this goes somewhat against a standard breading procedure. When I say standard breading procedure, it's always flour, egg wash, and then your breading. This, we're going to go egg wash, flour, and then the potatoes being the breading. I have here some sea scallops. I'm going to let Dennis explain a little bit more about scallops, but 3 different types. This is going to be the most common type that you're going to see: the sea scallops, calico scallops, and bay scallops. Very high price, very sought after. They're pretty spectacular, if you ask me. You could eat them raw as long as they're fresh. But anyways, I won't get into that part of it. Just sea scallops. I season it with salt and a little pepper. And I'm going to put them into the egg wash. Once again, just straight eggs. You want to get them nicely coated with the egg. And I'm going to keep one hand dry here and one hand wet, so you don't get a big lump of flour. But you just the flour is going to stick to the egg. You want to stick that on the potato. You can do this. I like doing it with scallops because it's one of my favorite things to eat. But you could do this with catfish. You could do it with trout. You can do it with any fish. The same procedure. This was a dish that goes way back to 1994, someplace around the University of Iowa. You might have seen it at a certain restaurant there for quite a while. And as in most things, it was kind of stolen from somewhere else, and I won't get into all that. Borrowed, I guess, and I put my own little twist on it. Let's see if it's tight. Hold on. Yeah, just take it, put it on a plate. Yeah. After you scallops, you have your bottom done. Then you want to take the top, put the potatoes on. They're not, of course, they're not going to stick directly. But the fun part about this is you can get these done about a half an hour before service, before you're ready to serve them. Service, restaurant talk, all that, everybody knows that. But you can't go too far because the potatoes still will go ahead and oxidize a little bit on you. But the longer you let them sit, the more potatoes going to stick on there. So we're going to let them set for a little bit, and I'm going to pull the sirloin out. Save that for later. And then the salmon. So I was saying before, you want the salmon to be firm all the way through. You don't want it to be mushy. If you have a temperature or a thermometer, you bring it up to about 125, 130 degrees. If you go any farther, the proteins will start coming out of the fish and it'll get dry. But you could leave it right here. We're just going to leave it here for a second. You can cut it directly open. You can chill it down. You could serve it. You can also serve that chilled with an aioli, a saffron aioli, if you'd like to do that in the summertime. Today we're just going to go ahead and serve it with a little beurre blanc, which I'm going to finish next here. Now the beurre blanc, or white butter as it translates to, you can see how far that I'm not sure, can you see that or no, through the mirror? Yeah. The white wine's reduced down by at least 3/4, but I still have a little bit of the wine left. I want to get the pan somewhat warm, but not hot. The trick about the butter sauce, it's pretty much what you see right here in butter and lemon. So beurre blanc, if you saw the movie Julie and Julia, it was introduced back to her years and years ago, and she thought it was the most spectacular thing when she finally got it down to a science. And now there's so many wrong ways to do it, but this would be the proper way to do it. A restaurant way of doing this would go ahead and put heavy cream into it, but what is heavy cream but butter that hasn't been churned down? So you go ahead and reduce down your heavy cream. If you're going to be making a 20-pound batch of butter sauce, you don't want it to break. So that was the key part to it, is you don't want it to break in the middle of the service and have to do it again. But you have it warm, and I'm just adding room temperature butter. I'm just going to start with a little bit, and you're forming an emulsion. The emulsion that we're putting together, it's basically you have to have an acid, and there's two items that aren't going to go together, is the acid and the butter. So you have to be very careful. You can see it's getting a little bit too warm. So I'm just going to pull it off the fire. You can sit there and whip it, but this works pretty well. And all I'm going to do, you can see it's starting to form the sauce. It'll start thickening up the more butter that I add to it. But I just want to get it warm enough, but I can't have it too hot, because once again the butter will melt out of it. Some people will, go ahead and strain the shallots and the garlic off. To be honest, I think it adds a little bit of texture, and it looks kind of nice on the plate, as you'll see later, with the purple. At this point, you want to taste to make sure you have the butter flavor in there, and it's not all wine flavor, because it gets pretty intense with the wine. So I'm going to add a little more butter into it, because it's still pretty intense with wine. And this isn't something you'd want to do every day because of the amount of butter that you have in it. But once again, anything in moderation, except for a couple things, I think are okay. I wouldn't do this every day. If I have friends coming over or guests coming over, this is probably something I would do. The nice part of this is the bare basics, and all I'm adding is lemon to it. You can do a million different variations. You can do blood orange and basil. You could do lime and dill. You could do lemon and tarragon. There's a million different variations. I'm just doing the lemon one here, where I'm going to finish it right at the end. It's probably going to need just a touch of salt and pepper, and then some fresh lemon juice, and that kind of brightens it up. and just a little bit of salt and pepper. See, if you, at this point, you put your lime juice in, you put your blood orange in. There's, like I said, 1,000,000 variations on this. Just let your imagination go and play with it. But that's the basic beurre blanc. Now I'm not gonna put that back on the fire. I'm just gonna keep it warm by the stove. The thing about the scallops, you can see that the potatoes are stuck to it. Realistically, the people who call these scallop hash browns, that's what they're going to come out to look like. But they really, really taste good, and with the scallop in the center. But you can see it's stuck to the scallop itself. And I'm going to start in a non-stick pan, some canola oil, and you just want to cook it to make it look just like a hash brown. Honestly, that's the best way of doing it. Dennis is going to talk a little bit more about scallops and about diver scallops and all different types of scallops that we have. Not really, huh? As I go, if I do something over here, I'll interrupt you.
Yeah.
And just start from there, all right?
The most important thing about scallops to me is dry scallops, as opposed to what we call them plumped scallops. Dry scallops are scallops that are natural. They've come right out of the shell. They've done nothing to them. Unfortunately, a lot of the scallops you get, I would say probably 80% of the scallops you get have had preservatives and water and stuff added to them for several reasons. One, you can pump up a scallop and soak it and make it look a lot bigger than it really was. So you can take a scallop, which they're sized U10, which means there's 10 or less to a pound, U20, 20 or less to a pound. You take a U20 and make it a U10 and you get a lot more money for it. But what happens is when you plump a scallop up like that and then you cook it, it shrinks down quite a bit. The other thing is the preservatives they use in them. It's called a tripoly something. It's a long word. Phosphate, yeah. It kind of gives it an off taste, I think. And so to me, to have the best quality scallop, you got to have a dry scallop. And probably when I first started, I've been with this 20 plus years. One of my things was to do dry scallops. It wasn't the norm in the industry then, but we went to just dry scallops only, and the industry's kind of picked up and it's getting to be more traction, and you'll see a lot more dry scallops. But you want to make sure you see that on the if you want to know for sure, look at the label, look at the back, and see if it has anything other than scallop listed. So for sea scallops, they're the bigger scallops, and then you have bay scallops. They are a smaller, shallower water scallop. They're probably maybe the size of a dime, possibly. Those are, we say use a bay scallop more in like a salad stir fry. Yeah. Whereas the sea scallops are really great for doing presentations like he's doing here. I prefer the sea scallops as well to the bay scallops.
Once again with the oil, I'm just going to bring it up. It has a very light haze over it. You don't want it. You want to go over medium high heat with canola oil, and just place your potatoes in, and really don't want to touch them after you get them in the pan. You want to let them brown up.
You can get good scallops, fresh or frozen. The sea scallops that we get here are fresh. The bay scallops that we carry are frozen. I find it a little more difficult to find a dry, fresh scallop than I do a dry sea scallop. I'm not quite sure why that is, but it's just a supply issue. But right now, the seas are fresh and the bays are frozen. So, but you get good quality. So that's a good thing to talk about, fresh versus frozen too sometimes.
Yeah, there really isn't. You will find a good quality in frozen. This is coming from a chef compared to a seafood guy. To me, fresh and frozen, everybody's going to say, well, you have to have fresh, you have to have fresh. Absolutely. If, number one, you live next to the water, whatever coast, you know you can get it fresh. It's going to be a couple days old at the very most. It's going to be a high quality. Now with such technology that they have in processing fish, was it 90% of the fish I think that we get here at Hy-Vee that's frozen is frozen within an hour after it's caught. So you have your choice, something that's been caught, processed, frozen within an hour, or something that's going to be 2 to 3 days old by the time it reaches Iowa. We don't have that advantage of what you have on the coast with fish that's caught, and you basically have it a couple hours later after it's been caught, fresh, still with the rigor mortis set in, and from that point. But Frozen fish is not bad. It's definitely not bad. You learn, you get a more consistent product, I think. You know exactly what you're getting. It's not a bad product.
It really comes down to, if you live on the coast, there's two different kind of fishermen. There's a day fisherman and there's the guy that goes out for long lengths of time. The day fisherman brings back a swordfish he caught that day. It's going to be great, right? But the commercial guy is going to be out for a week. And what he's going to do is he's going to throw those fish in a hold. And the best fish on the way back in is the fish that are on top. Otherwise, fish at the bottom are a week old. What they've gone to now is fisher processors, and we saw this firsthand in Seattle. The really big fish boats, they have all the processing right on the boat. They catch that fish, they clean it, they freeze it, they store it, they even pack it, and then when they come into port, it goes right off the boat and gets shipped into a warehouse and gets out to us. A lot of times that fish is fresher than the fish that comes in off the boat because it got caught, froze, ready to go. You'll find that a lot nowadays with the technology of the flash freezing, the ability to do that at sea. Some of the boats, the boat we were on is a massive boat, and it could just take tons of fish and process it at sea, and it's just going all the time. Some items I find I prefer the frozen to as opposed to the fresh. Granted, we're not on the coast, but here in Iowa, tuna, swordfish, those items come in really good quality frozen. Shrimp is one of the items that, what happens with shrimp is and being from New Orleans, you've seen this, when I was on a shrimp boat, the shrimpers told me this, is the people that eat fresh shrimp down there are getting it right off the boat that day. But what happens is when these guys are out, they're brining and freezing the shrimp right on the boat. And so the idea of actual fresh shrimp where we are is not really true. You'll see some people come around.
Yeah, it's not even close to what you will see down there. The shrimp that gets up here, it's 2 days old. I'm not going to knock anybody that has fresh shrimp here or gets it in the area. But when literally people go out, if it's a full moon that night, they're out at 3 o'clock in the morning when the moon is the fullest. My next door neighbor was a shrimper, so I had the chance to go out with him. And you're scooping up, and the neatest thing is to see the eyeballs of the shrimp when they land on the platform because they're all fluorescent. So you can see where the shrimp are and the other fish, so you just go for the eyeballs because you can't see anything else if you don't have the light. But that's fresh shrimp, and the flavor is so much different compared to something that sets for a little bit. Any frozen shrimp in Louisiana, any of the locals down there, it has an iota 4, which is an iodine flavor, an iodine smell to it. I'm going to stop 1 second, kind of show you where I'm at with this. But the scallops, you can see, they're lightly browning on the potatoes. I'm going to be kind of, no, I'm not even going to try that. You just want to turn them over. You got a nice light brown color to them. And put them back on the fire. And just let them sit. Yeah. Now, once again with the shrimp, yeah, some in Louisiana will not eat frozen shrimp. But in shrimp season, you have 2 seasons down there. Of course, you're going to buy your shrimp at this shrimp down there during shrimp season will be $1.50 a pound. You're going to buy 10,000 pounds of it to get through the between parts of the season, but it's frozen an hour after it's caught. So they even freeze their shrimp down there. Fresh shrimp right off the boats. When you go out to the docks, that's a different story. That might be $3 or $4 a pound at the very most. I think the most I paid when I was there was $6 a pound for a shrimp that was just huge. And it's a spectacular product, but we're not privy to that quality product.
You don't get fresh shrimp in Iowa.
But you can't get good pork and corn in Louisiana, so I'll just say that.
Well, I mean, there are people that say they have fresh shrimp. They come up, bring it up. They're not getting fresh shrimp. I posed that question to a shrimper when I was down there. I said, well, what about these guys that come out with fresh shrimp and say they got fresh Louisiana shrimp? And they said, no way, because they degrade so quickly. And the problem is that they start to get black spots on them. And that happens rather quickly. That's why they have to freeze them, and that's why they have to add chemicals to them. And that brings us to another issue with shrimp called natural shrimp. Here we carry all natural shrimp in our service case. In bags of frozen shrimp, it's kind of rare to find natural shrimp. And when I say natural, there again, they have preservatives added to them. It's the tripolyphosphates that we're talking about. And what that does is it helps alleviate the black spot issue. So the black spot doesn't hurt the shrimp, it just doesn't look good. So people won't buy it because it doesn't look good. So they use a chemical to preserve the shrimp and make it look good in the frozen package. The natural shrimp we use does not have that. What happens is the shrimpers have to have shorter trips, and they have to freeze that shrimp right on the boat for us. It's a special deal. Not a lot of shrimpers do it. I think when we were down in Louisiana, of the 40 boats the company, Paul Piazza Shrimp is who we buy from, of the 40 boats they had, I think only 3 did natural shrimp, because it limits their income ability because they can't go out for a long time, they can't get loads of shrimp, they have to get smaller amounts, freeze them for us and pack them up. So it's a little different deal. I think the shrimp tastes better that way naturally. I agree with Chef, the fresh shrimp right off the boat is amazing, but being as we can't get that, we have to make some sacrifices. But in that way, the natural shrimp, the wild American shrimp from Louisiana are the best flavor shrimp of all, I think. There are a lot of farm shrimps out there, and the problem with farm shrimps are this kind of the same issues we have with salmon, is disease, environmental. They're very dirty, they grow them in ponds. They have to cut down large amounts of, a lot of deforestation to use. They have to grow them closer to the ocean. You'll see it a lot in Asian countries, down in South America. So they take up large areas of land and they can't be reused for anything. And then they pump out the water into the ocean or into the canals. It's dirty water. The best shrimp situations are closed systems. And what a closed system is that they recirculate the water, they filter it, and they take out all the junk, and they don't send it into the environment. And there is only one company right now, it's a Belize shrimp, and we carry it. It is, we have a cooked and then 2 raw. And what they have is down there in Belize is they have a neat little closed system by the ocean. They pump in ocean water and then they recirculate it. And what makes them different than other companies is their processing operation is right where they raise the shrimp. And a lot of these foreign countries, Asian countries, they have big ponds, but then they have to truck the shrimp hours away to the processing plants. They harvest the shrimp, drain the pond, and they're in the processing plant within 10 minutes. So, boom, that quick freeze that we're talking about.
We don't want to forget about our scallops. I'm going to interject.
Oh yeah, jump in.
What I'm going to do, I'm going to take our butter sauce that I made here and drizzle it on the plate. I have some caramelized onions in the center. I'm going to take the warm scallops. You want to get that whole potato crust in there with it. And just go ahead, top it off with a little garnish of just a little bit more onion. But that's a classic scallop lyonnaise dish there. Very simple. The nice part about the way we cook the scallops here is they're still just barely opaque in the center. You don't want to overcook them. They're going to get a little bit chewy if you overcook them. And using a quality scallop like this, you'll see the difference in the flavor once you go ahead and taste it.
Did you talk about taking the little pad off of them?
Yeah, on all the, I didn't leave, took them all off, but all of the scallops, you'll see on the smaller side, there's kind of 2 sides to the scallop itself. You have a larger side and a smaller side, but on the smaller side, it's the muscle that attaches it to the shell. Very tough. Some people leave it on there. I don't know why, but you want that off of there. It tastes just like scallop, but it's real chewy. So you want to go ahead and pull that off so you have a nice, perfectly round scallop such as this here.
Yeah, it pulls off real easily, but it's just a little extra step when you're preparing them.
And just make sure you pull that one off of there. Like I said, some people will leave it on. I don't care for it, so I don't mess with that. But here's our scallops lyonnaise. One of the top dishes in my mind that I like the most. Another one that I've been you saw it sitting out here before. The last dish that we're going to be doing, it's has nothing to do with barbecue as we know it here in Iowa. It's a New Orleans style barbecue shrimp. You ask anybody down there, why do they call it barbecue? They can't answer they can't answer that. It's, you marinate your shrimp. You'll see it at the old school seafood places in Louisiana. Mosca's, a lot of places in the French Quarter will try to go ahead and do this. You'll see some variations of it here in town, which are very close, because I know those guys that make it, they live down in Louisiana, so It's a really close version, but this is as close as I'm going to get. I took some Louisiana white shrimp, a lot of garlic, Worcestershire, hot sauce. I use a crystal hot sauce, lemon juice, black pepper, salt, and fresh rosemary. The rosemary is very, very pungent, but I've had this marinating since this morning with the shell on, okay? There'll be a little demo on how to go ahead and eat this later, but it's as simple as that. So you take that, you're gonna put it in a pan, and you're gonna cook your shrimp. You don't need the lid on, you're just gonna keep on stirring it around till your shrimp start to turn lightly pink. And then the other part of it is, once again, butter. A lot of butter is used, and I'll have this, once it's all done with the shrimp, I'll show you how we're gonna go ahead and eat this. It's a treat to me. It's one of my favorite things to do, because you'll get a different flavor once again with Louisiana shrimp, because you're gonna have the head on. The biggest thing about the shrimp down there with the head on, you have something what's called butter in the head, which is, I'm not going to get particular, but there's a lot of flavor in the heads of the shrimp, okay? And that's going to seep out into the sauce itself. And so you go ahead and you basically dip your shrimp in with the sauce. You go ahead and get all the sauce off the outside of the shrimp. Then you peel your shrimp. You have to do it with your family or people that you really like, because you're going to double and triple dip on this one. And then you dip your shrimp in there into the sauce and you eat your shrimp. When it's all done, all the shrimp are done, it's all piled over here. Then we're going to take a baguette, and every single last bit of that sauce you soup up with baguette. And it's pretty darn good. So I'm going to set up a couple of the items, have everything on a platter here except for the shrimp, and show you what the final product looks like. For the crawfish bread, the scallops are done. For the salmon, as well as the stuffed sirloin. So give me a couple minutes and I'm going to get that set up on a platter, okay? Okay, now that your sirloin is done here, you're going to go ahead and remove the butcher twine, the strings. I just shut it off for a second. And we're going to take the sirloin and just cut about 1-inch pieces. I'd recommend a sharp knife, or it's going to all kind of rip through on you there. We're going to take this, but you can see on the, I'm going to pick one up here so you can see a little bit closer. You have a nice little design with the asparagus, and then your crab in the center, and then your nice medium rare cooked sirloin on the outside. Now we're going to get back to our shrimp. You see your shrimp, they're right at about halfway to 3/4 cooked. Nice little color to them. And then you cannot be shy with butter on this one. Once again, anything in moderation. I've used a lot of rich dishes here today, but you really can't, if you're going to make this one right, you have to have a lot of butter into it. And it's going to be spicy. But you just let it stir around, and once again, all that acid from the lemon and the hot sauce and the Worcestershire will go ahead and emulsify your butter. One of the items that I didn't speak of right here, as far as the caramelized onions on the scallops, I take a white onion. I like a white onion, not a yellow one. I think it's a little bit sweeter. I take it, peel it, medium heat with canola oil, and just let it start to brown over medium heat, and just let it keep on cooking. And if it's going to start browning too much, turn the heat down. If it's not browning enough, turn the heat up. It's got to be a medium heat. A little bit of salt and pepper. If you want to put a touch of sugar in there, you want to get it sweeter if your onions aren't too sweet enough. And you just cook them till you get that color. And that's just what goes with the scallops lyonnaise here. Now taking a look at the shrimp. You have your sauce, you have your shrimp. You really, honestly, you serve it just like that. You would serve it in a crock. In Louisiana, this is one of those that you'd put in the oven in a crock. You pull it out and really just go ahead and start the whole process off. It's customary. Go ahead and break bread with friends. You go ahead and break a piece of bread off like that, and then you get to go ahead and taste what you have in there. And I'm going to stop right here because I'm really hungry and I want to taste this shrimp when it's nice and hot. But thanks for watching. I hope you got some information from this and you get to use some of these. If you're ever in this area of Iowa City, just come and ask for any questions that you have about items that I may have done here, and we'll have some recipes posted as well. Thank you.